I'm Kevin Davis, and this is the Catholic Family Podcast. And my good buddy, my BFF Eric, is over here next to me. And well, we have one of the most random last second shows of all time. So I really appreciate Eric. I think about 10 minutes ago, I said, "Hey, do you want to come on a podcast?" And he said yes, which is pretty cool for a family man. I appreciate that. Only a BFF would actually do that for me. But I told Eric, I'm so sick of telling people that I'm sorry that we don't have enough content. And I had a podcast unfortunately canceled today, so I was like, okay, what can I do a podcast about? And Eric and I had talked in the past about doing a show about Master and Commander, which is an awesome movie, and talking a bit about where Hollywood has gone since then. Now, I think we're both not Hollywood aficionados and we're not Master and Commander aficionados, but I think it's an interesting conversation. And I guess we'll see where it goes. So BFF, thanks for joining. And where should we start?
It's a good question. I wasn't thinking about Master and Commander until about 10 minutes ago.
Fair enough. Well, what's your first? I mean, what is your impression of the movie? I know you like it, so why do you like it?
Yeah, well, I like it. It's always been one of my favorites. It's a good movie as far as quality, entertainment value goes. It's it's not a bad movie as far as like values go, right? I mean, most movies you have to say like, well, there's this scene or there's that scene. I don't think there's a single scene in Master and Commander that you have to like filter out.
Exactly. And there's Sophia again, and yeah, exactly. And it just has, I don't know, some traditional values, I suppose, and not even just traditional values. It just has traditional storytelling. It
Mhm.
feels like kind of a throwback to the 1940s or 50s, and just
Well,
a story that's
it's
just
a
there's no love, like there's no love triangle in it. It's one of those things. Like there's like, I don't know, do you see a woman in the entire movie? Maybe
I think yeah, for like
very
2
briefly.
seconds. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. It's just
But
not even a part of the movie.
it's a manly man's movie for sure. And a funny story about this, like this is probably too personal, but when I got married about 10 years ago, one of the first movies we watched together was like, you have to see Master and Commander. This is my favorite movie.
Nice.
And so we sat down and she slept through most of it. So I know you have a lot of ladies watching your podcast. Might not be for them, but for any men,
Sophie.
it's fantastic.
Well, and I think that, I mean, and I would actually, I want to talk about movies that are good for women too. I mean, I'd love to have your wife on to talk about Jane Austen movies because I think they have their own place and I think they have their own beauty to them. But I think, again, I think what we see so lost in today's Hollywood or society in general or entertainment is just actual good, virtuous manliness. Now, I
Mhm.
know war is hell, war is ugly, war is terrible. It's not something we want, and this is a war movie, so I understand that. But I guess what this movie captures is men that they're in it. I mean, if they like it or not, they kind of get. I guess they're kind of chasing down these French,
Mhm. It's
French.
French. Yeah,
It's
yeah. It's
French. Yeah,
the
chasing down the French
Napoleonic War.
warships, right? And eventually, they kind of get caught up in it, and they chase them all around the South Seas, I suppose, and catch up and fight some battles. And there's something so really simple about it that I think that's part of why I like it. That the ideas of good and bad are really simplified, even though the French weren't really the bad guys, but in this story they were.
Yes, in the shoes of Captain Jack. Yeah,
Right,
they
right,
would be.
exactly.
Well, and it's a well-rounded manliness too, right? I mean, this isn't like your macho He-Man, James Bond manliness either, right? These guys are playing music. That's a big part of that.
Right.
There's religious, even though it's Protestant, obviously, whatever it is, 18th century England, all Protestant. But there's religion, there's emotion, there's discovery, there's exploration, there's courage, there's warfare, all that kind of stuff, all wrapped together, which is nice.
Right. Well,
Refreshing
exactly.
if you watch it again, after
Yeah, totally.
the
When I've watched
latest
it,
slew of movies that have come out.
exactly, and I've watched it several times, and I think also with my wife, who I think also probably fell asleep. But it's just an amazing thing that a couple years ago I really pretty much stopped watching movies. I mean, very rarely. We still watch occasional ones. We're gonna watch probably tonight. We're gonna watch the original Sound of Music movie, which is in German.
Ooh,
It's a German film that was
in
made 19
German.
yeah, made in 1956, and then the other film was kind of based on it. So
Hmm.
I'm really curious to watch that. But even so, we watched a few movies a year, kind of, and we find ourselves still being extremely picky about what we're watching. But part of it was, I remember I watched a couple movies or shows in a row, and each one of them had some sort of, homosexual character of some sort,
Mhm.
or some theme. And it seems like everything you watch now has to have some immoral theme that's not just in the background. It's not just like, okay, this kind of runs through the storyline. It is, hey, this is a theme that we are pushing, and we're going to push it hard.
And this is good, and you must
Right.
embrace it.
Right, exactly. Right. And I think
Yeah.
that that's, and it just gets gross. And I don't know. I mean, are you a fan of the Avenger movies?
Yeah, for the nerds out there, up to phase 4, yeah.
So
I
that
think
ended with Endgame.
Endgame, yeah,
Yeah.
which had its own issues. It was starting to slide into the what we saw later on, but but even like the Avenger movies, Captain America was probably pretty clean all throughout. But even the Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2 had scenes where it's like
Yeah.
I
Right.
wouldn't have shown that. But in
Right.
general, like that there was still they were still heroes. There was still heroes arc, right? I mean, devil's advocate, you could argue, well, Iron Man started out selfish playboy, and by the end he was married with a kid and sacrificing himself for them.
Right.
Like even that's gone. Right now you
Right.
have basically your basic story, your superhero storyline now is woman is born awesome, she needs to learn. There's no learning arc, there's no story arc, and just the rest of the movie is all the rest of the characters figuring out how awesome she is.
So in other words, Star Wars, especially, right?
Well, I mean, Star
That's like the
Wars,
perfect
Avengers, like
example of
all
it.
of them, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's true. Yeah.
And so,
Well, and
yeah.
I think and I think that's what's so nice about Master and Commander, especially, is that you don't get the sense of like someone trying to push their worldview on you. It's just like, hey,
Mm-mm.
here's a story about guys on a ship trying to find other guys on another ship, and you hear their stories, and you get kind of connected with the characters,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no one's trying to preach to me about
Yeah.
something. And I mean, I think plenty of people could say, hey, just don't watch any movies. And honestly, I'm with you. I think that's not a terrible approach. That's fine. I mean, but I love movies. I love film. I love storytelling. So I
Mm-hmm.
want to watch something if I can. And so if I'm going to watch something, I just want to watch a pure story. Something
Mm-hmm.
that's not just filled with garbage. And they don't
Yeah.
get that.
Well, and there was opportunity in there too, right? I mean, a ship full of dudes, you could have had like a gay storyline being pushed, right?
Hundred
One
percent.
of the places that they spend a lot of time is the Galapagos, right? And it was about the time of Charles Darwin. You could have used a really ham-fisted evolution thing, but they didn't.
Right.
And it's like all these little, opportunities to push the message. And I don't know if it was just because it's 20 years ago now. Goodness
Probably.
gracious.
Yeah.
It's 2003, 20 years ago
Wow.
that we didn't have messages to push, but I don't think that's the case either. I think it was just like a well done movie.
Well, and I think it was a time of, I don't know, it was a time of more quote unquote pure values, and not necessarily good Catholic values all the time. I understand that,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, around 9/11, whatever you want to believe about 9/11, the values that came from it were, I think, unquestionably good. I mean, you had so much of this, patriotism and this feeling of, actual togetherness and stuff, and I think that really is true. I mean, I was a kid at the time, but even still, you were too. I mean, but I think you could say the same, that there really was a good feeling in America. Like you felt like, I don't know, like doing good things, big things,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that that's something that boy, can you imagine that now? I don't. I mean, can you imagine Americans feeling like, proud of themselves and proud of
Unified and
their country,
patriotic.
unified? No chance.
No.
It's sad.
Yeah, wars have a tendency to do that, right? I mean, war is hell. War is punishment from God for the sins of mankind. But
Right.
at the same time, you look at, the country, even if we're talking Hollywood, let's talk Hollywood in the 1920s and early 30s. It was really bad.
Yeah.
You don't
Right.
have to do much research into the stars. Like even the silent era, Charlie Chaplin, like gross, evil stuff going on that's just as bad
Totally.
as it is now.
Yep.
And then you had World War I and World War II come along, and then you have the Hays Code, you have the Legion of Decency, right? War has a way of bringing people back to God,
That's a great point.
and it's
Yeah.
a silver lining. Like obviously, I'm not pro war,
Right. Right. Right.
but
Yeah.
if war is going to happen, it does tend to bring people to God, and so
Yeah, and obviously that's a much deeper theme, and I think it's one that maybe you and I've talked about in the past shows too. That right, exactly. I mean, we talk about all the time and how we fix the world, and it's like, well, probably famine
look
or
in the mirror.
war or something. Yeah, but right, exactly. I mean, that's the best way to do it. But I think that that's Yeah, see, that's an interesting kind of back to the decision of not to watch movies. And this is a really tough one. It's like it's the topic of boycotting. We're going to publish a show on Monday
Mm.
with me and Matt that we just talked about that too with the whole Bud Light, the Anheuser Busch.
Hmm.
That whole topic really brings up the idea of boycotting, which we see actually can work if in mass people
Hmm.
boycott. But I mean, and so personally for you, I'm going to put you on the spot. How do
I'm not
you?
not pro Bud Light even
You're not
before
pro
the
Bud Light.
trans thing.
Well,
No.
well. You're also a Colorado. You're also a Colorado boy. You're more of a
Yeah.
Coors guy, which I respect.
I'm more of a real beer guy.
Yeah, that's true. Bud Light is though. I have to admit, I used to drink occasionally Bud Light Lime, but since I moved to Germany, no worries. I have not
Yeah,
done
good.
that. But
Sorry, I
yeah,
interrupted your question. See how I deflected that?
yeah, that was good. That was it. Get yourself off the hot seat. No, well, the question is, and this is a tough one, and I mean, you can dodge this question if you want because it's pretty personal. But how do you judge? Let's go with your family. I think that's a better question because personally, that's even tougher. But with your kids, how do you judge what they can watch and what they can't? I mean, what are your parameters?
Um, it's basically, is watching this going to make you a better person or a worse person? Is kind of how I see it, right? And so you think, well, I'm an adult, I can watch XYZ, it's not going to affect me. Everything you watch affects you, right? That's just that's human nature. So for the kids example, right? If they watch a show that, I don't know, what's an example? Peppa Pig. It's this pig and it's mommy and daddy and they're in Britain and they're cute and they do cute things and it was all fine and dandy, right? We let our kids watch that. There's no bad words, no messaging until about a year ago they introduced a gay couple. And then it's like, nope, done. No more Peppa
Right.
Pig. Right. And so that's kind of the line for me. And I tend to be, liberal isn't the right word. Um, Less neurotic about it, maybe.
Yeah.
then and not then I should, maybe then I should be. But if they're watching an animal show like a Discovery Channel show that is actually just, for kids, here's animals, here's what they do, here's where they live, here's what they eat, all that type of thing. That's not only not harmful, I think that's good, right? And educational and stuff. But then if it starts pushing, global warming and, their environment's going and we have to, stop having so many people to make them be able to flourish, make these platypus flourish, then it's shut it off, right?
But
It's
that's
kind of just,
exactly.
it's a
But
very,
I've seen that. It's crazy. I'm so glad you bring that up because I've seen these. Was it the guy's name David Attenborough? David Attenborough.
David Attenborough,
Yeah. So
awesome
he's
narrator.
famous. He's a great
Yeah.
narrator, and he's been doing
He's
it
the
for
brother of John
100 years.
Attenborough, who
I
is
thought he must
John,
be. That's
John
interesting.
Hammond from
Hello,
Jurassic Park.
John. Hello, John.
Hey, Paul.
Uh,
Anyway,
uh, um, yeah, exactly.
hello,
Paul,
John.
that's for you. Hello, John. Yes, but you got me off track now with hello, John.
This is what you get for inviting me on in 5 minutes.
Exactly. The
Just
true nerd on
chaos.
the show. This is what happens. But David Attenborough, yeah. So I was watching that with Sophia one time when she was sick, and we're just watching this. I thought, okay, you know, David Attenborough's Animals of the Sahara. I'm like, okay, I used to watch these animal shows all the time, and I think like the first, and in the wild they
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't actually exist for the next 10 years if people don't stop living and breathing. I mean, it's seriously, it's like it's crazy. It was like the message was really wild,
Yeah.
and again, this is a topic we talked about before. That okay, I am absolutely pro environment and taking care of our environment, and not. I'm actually anti plastics. I think that's a really big topic that I think we should talk about more. But you know, I'm also not like, hey, people need to stop existing so that lions can have a little more space in the Sahara. I mean, really? And I think that's how a
Mm,
lot of these people think. I really
yeah.
do. And they even talk about it.
This is going in all kinds of directions, but
I love it.
Paul Ehrlich was the author of The Population Bomb in the late 60s. Are you familiar with that at all?
I've heard of it.
There were like 1.5 billion people on Earth at the time, and his calculations were, by the time we reach 4 billion, we'll max capacity the Earth. There'll be resource fighting. Everyone will be poor. We need to stop reproducing, basically.
Right.
And he's still out there. He's still preaching the message while the Earth is at 8 billion people and richer than it's ever been.
Right.
It's like, it just shows you it's not science, it's ideology.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of that stuff. I mean, a lot,
Yeah.
but see, that's a danger back to shows. I mean, what can you be? Even Peppa Pig. I mean, this is an interesting thing too. I've seen studies of Peppa Pig where they say, and I don't know anything about Peppa Pig personally, but they say, I think they said that the children were proven to misbehave more who watched Peppa Pig than those who didn't. And
Hmm.
I don't know why. It was something, I think it's something to do with maybe the kids disobeying their parents. Again, I've never watched it, so I don't know. But
Yeah, I didn't see
interesting,
much of that,
interesting that
but yeah.
there must be some effects from everything we watch, as you say. And if anything that's produced, someone is producing it for a reason. I mean, look at Anheuser Busch. It's not,
Mhm.
clearly we see it's not just
It's
for
not for good
profit.
beer. Yeah.
It's not just for good beer. It's not even just for profit. Nowadays, it has to be for profit or and a some form of message. And I mean, gee whiz, if it's a message coming from the world today, are we gonna
Chances are it's not gonna be good.
100? Yeah, totally.
Although I do, I'm interested to hear your and Matt's take on boycotts because it does appear to be working. Slowly but surely. Like the
Oh,
go
I think
woke, go
quickly but surely.
the go,
Jeez.
the go woke,
Two
go
two
broke
weeks, six
thing is
billion bucks or something
yeah,
like that is what I've heard. I mean,
yeah. The
I
go
mean,
woke, go
and
broke
I
thing
mean,
is real.
have we talked about? I don't know if you and I have talked about it, but I've talked about it several times on the show. Talking about boycotts. That I am a firm believer in boycotting. I mean, really firm, and especially personal boycotts, because
Hmm.
I think that's what we should do. You should personally stand up against bad and stand up for good, right? And I think that's.
Hmm.
But as you said, I think what's a beautiful thing is that we've seen, and it's not just Anheuser-Busch. We've seen it with Disney, we've seen it with Netflix, we've seen it with quite a few other companies that they go woke. And when we say woke, we mean like
Like full
bonkers,
on
crazy, out of their
leftist. Yes.
minds leftists. I mean, Netflix produces a show with like half naked little girls. I mean, that's not even kidding, guys. That's actually what they
Hmm.
did. And so of course they lose billions and billions and billions of dollars. And so I think you can see that these things, every one of our subscriptions actually does matter. That's a total lie that they don't want us to believe that, oh, one subscription, it's not going to actually
Hmm.
affect anything. Baloney. Totally does. Like every vote totally matters.
Hmm. Yeah. And going back to the kid, because I'm just thinking about it as we're talking. One of the things that I think is dangerous and that's very easy to do is to say no shows, shut it all off,
Hmm.
right? Um, and then sheltering is obviously a good thing, but it has to be a controlled shelter, right? Because our job as parents aren't to shelter our kids till they turn 18 and then they move out and they're on their own,
Right.
right? We need to get them ready for the world because, unless in extraordinary circumstances, none of our kids are going to be living with us when they're 20, 25, 30, right?
Right.
Hopefully, anyway. Um,
Exactly.
so like using like Peppa Pig is probably not a good example because like the gay stuff is like even my oldest is too young for that. But maybe that we're running out of space on Earth and the lions are all going to die. It might not be a bad idea to let them see that, let them hear that, and then quickly explain to them this is wrong, right? And
Sure.
this is why, right?
Yeah.
We have to be logical because kids are smart. If you just say, "Oh, that's baloney, turn it off," and then they never see it again, when they turn 20, 25, they move out of the house, they start seeing all of this. They're not going to have a rationality behind defending why it's wrong.
But I think you make a really good point, though. A really important part of that point is that it has to be controlled. I think that's if you're sitting there watching it with them, and then you can say, no, 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 no. This is garbage, or and Darwin said blah 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 blah. Okay, you can say, yeah, okay, this and this. But if you just plug on the TV and say, oh, it's a nature thing, it's fine. That's more of my issue with it too. I mean, because I'm with you that you can't just shut everything off, and I think even more importantly, as we're doing right now or trying to, is that if you shut off media, you have to replace it with something. I mean, if you
Hmm.
if you say you can't read any books, you can't go to school, you can't have friends at school, then you have to provide other friends. You have to provide other books. I was stuck with friends like you during my whole life, and I mean,
Sucks to be
look what
you.
happened to me. but but
Is that why you
I mean,
left the country?
yeah,
Really?
it may be. That's a personal question, but it's something that my parents really did understand, that they and I think I'm sure yours did too. That okay, we're going to homeschool, we're going to take that whole field of opportunity away. We're going to really control what our kids can do and what friends they have. But then you actually have to give them people who can be their friends.
Hmm.
Otherwise, yeah, they're gonna hate you. They're not gonna have fun, and they're gonna be miserable, and then they're gonna totally leave and go crazy when they turn 18. And I think that's
Hmm.
giving kids the an alternative is vitally important. Or as you say, a controlled environment where they can watch things that obviously aren't just directly immoral, like
Hmm.
the Sahara.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, you never watch,
Yeah, right, exactly.
nothing
Yeah,
crazy,
right.
but little bits and pieces of what the world outside looks like, carefully controlled with an explanation. This is why this is bad, and this is why we do what we do.
Yep.
I
Well, and
think
I think
that.
I think it's important for us too. Even I mean, I've been really big into the Crusades lately because it's cool, it's manly, and it's cool, and I like it. And so, but I kept reading, books written by Catholics and pro, and I think it's better because it's from a Catholic perspective,
Hmm.
which
Oh
I
yeah.
am. But I also, right now I'm listening to another one because I think it is also good to have a little bit of that, I don't know, control, kind of like that. Okay, what does the world say? Because I actually want to know. I want to know what they say, and you got to be really careful with that. I'm not
Hmm.
saying to digest, not to ingest poison because you want to see how it tastes, but I
But you,
think
you should know what poison looks like and smells
yeah,
like, and the
exactly. I think
antidote for it,
that's
right?
exactly right. I mean, to at least
That's the whole point of
understand their side.
apologetics, right? You open an apologetics book, and it's full of like the Summa, right? St. Thomas has all of these questions, basically errors, heresies, and states them, and then goes through and refutes them, right?
Right,
He doesn't shy away from the heresies, saying, "Oh no, those don't exist,"
right.
because that's setting yourself up for not understanding.
Well, and that's it. And again, so I don't want to take too long with this because I got to send the kids to bed. I know you got somewhere to be too, but it's another really interesting topic that I've been talking about lately too. Is that idea of being able to disagree, to be able to have a different opinion and be okay with it. And we see it a lot. I think you're not really on social media because you're a caveman, which is good for you. You're a much happier man than I am. But you see so many, but I'm sure you see it otherwise. People say the earth is flat, or another even
Every
better
time I
example.
come on, we get into the Earth is flat, Kevin. Why
I'm
is that?
sorry, yeah, or yeah, it's true, you just bring it out of me. Or whatever controversial thing it is, even if it's one
Yeah,
of
yeah.
the Catholic opinions, what is the way to
The
elect the Pope?
thesis. Yeah.
Yeah, thesis or whatever it is. And I think that our for some reason we are trained, or we now think, okay, I have to pick this side and I have to be against that side, and
Hmm.
if that I am right, so that is what I think, thus I am right.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, that's not how certainty works. I mean, you can't just be like, well, it's my opinion, so yours is wrong. Well,
Hmm.
could
Yeah,
be.
only in matters of faith, right, that have been taught by the
Exactly.
church
Yeah,
up to
exactly.
1958.
But that's because we have the surety of the church, not ourselves. It's not our
Well,
own surety. We
and
have it
there's a lot of
from the
things the
church.
church doesn't talk about,
Yeah,
right? The church doesn't talk about,
like flat Earth.
name your thing, flat Earth,
You may still
or
be an idiot if you believe flat Earth, but you know what
well,
I mean.
yeah, yeah,
We
yeah,
still
we
love
still
you.
love you. Yeah. Um, but yeah, you can have disagreements. I think it's the best analogy for me is sports, right? Broncos fan versus Raiders fan. You select your team, you say, this is my team. They're always right, even if they're worse, even if, XYZ, this is my team. This is who I'm staying with. That's what suddenly our society, and I think it's probably due to the proliferation of sports, that our society is using that same mentality in everything, right? Whether it's trans stuff, team trans, team anti-trans, or, whether it's something more neutral, like plastic, conservation in plastic, right?
100%. Yeah.
Um, I think it's reasonable also to be conservative, conservationist, with regards to taking care of the earth. But a lot of people on my team are like, anything against, anything global warming, anything this, anything that is just instantly, it's the
Right.
devil.
Yeah.
It's that sports team mentality,
It's a
and we
great
see
point.
that
And I
we see that unfortunately in the factions within the traditional church too.
exactly.
It's
Well,
like
and I
it's
think
okay to disagree with something that hasn't been that's not a teaching of the church. That's
exactly.
a matter of opinion, and
Right.
still hold the same faith.
Well, and to have the idea that, again, outside of faith, I could be wrong. Really, I mean, in my side could be wrong about some things we know. Like the whole transgender thing. Yeah,
Like,
of
yeah,
course. Come on, some things,
we
some
know what
things.
a woman is.
It's
We
not
know we're
exactly.
right
It's
there.
not a question, and we don't mean that. But yeah, I think the plastics that's a perfect example because I think it's one that there's so many quote unquote conservatives just poo poo it immediately. Just boom, it's gone. No, you're a tree hugger. Like, well,
Hmm.
aren't you the same guy who loves J.R.R. Tolkien? Have you ever read J.R.R. Tolkien? He was a total quote unquote tree hugger in terms of what many people call tree.
Conservationist
Yeah,
as opposed to an
exactly. I mean,
environmentalist. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Of course, but I mean, he was all about conserving nature and protecting what we have, protecting beauty. And
Hmm.
I think that's something that again we don't really think about. We become consumerist rather than conservationist.
Mhm. It would be an interesting thing to say, here's all the things that I believe, that aren't matters of faith, and look through them one by one and just say, okay, logically, rationally, does this make sense to believe this?
Right.
Right?
Sure.
And give the opposing side, again, in matters not of faith and morals, the enemy the benefit of the doubt, and just understand why they think the way they think.
Right.
Understand why you think the way you think. I mean, most of us are probably right on a 95% of it, but there's no guarantee of that other than
Right.
our own self-assuredness.
Well, and I think that our self-assuredness makes it so that we approach an argument or a disagreement as this totally on fire. And I'm worse than anybody. This on fire, like no, I'm sure of this. You're wrong, and I'm right. And it's like, well, what? I mean, who are you ever going to convince? First of all, especially if you're getting
Mhm.
personal or if you're getting heated, and that's how it always is, right? Because we attach these opinions or these beliefs onto our person rather than
Mhm.
this is something that might be true or it might not be true. I mean, this is what I believe, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is a part of me. But that's not how we think anymore. It is,
Mhm.
this is my belief. And so you go against that and you're my enemy. It's like, guys, come on,
Yeah.
chill. Kevin, chill.
Chill.
Yeah.
Kevin, chill.
Yeah.
How many times have I told you that in my
Oh,
day?
I'm terrible. And see, it's good it comes up in this podcast because I usually get the most heated in podcasts with you. So it's
I
it's
have a way
fitting.
of pushing your buttons, yeah.
It's fitting, yeah, and that's good. No, I think it's good. I think that it turned into a very interesting podcast, as it always does. We always get philosophical. Sophie, yes, it does. Yes, we
Yeah,
do.
master and commander to what is truth.
Hey, that's what we do. That's what we do over here at Catholic Family Podcast. Well, BFF, I really appreciate you coming on and spending 25
Definitely.
minutes with us. I had fun. It's always fun. Sophie, stop. And
Yeah, I hope, random content, not researched and just kind of ad-libbing is better than no content.
Of course it is. Of
I
course
don't
it
know.
is.
It
And
might
and
be.
if you're watching this and you don't like it, then we don't need your comments or your likes or your subscriptions. If you watched it and you did like it, then please let us know what you thought of this show.
Uh,
Right? No? Is that not?
no. Don't you want constructive feedback?
No, I'm good. I'm good. We don't need a free world. I just want a pat. I want a pat on the back. That's what I want. Awesome. Eric, it's been fun. Until next
Yeah.
time. God bless you.
Later, Kevin. God bless you.